regards to the water that you mentioned, you know, this has been going on for quite a while. You stated in the water there is a high level of pH, I believe that is what you said, and that because of this, it diminishes the amount of chlorine that's in the water. Who is responsible for this? Is this Seven Seas, the water production company, or is it GEBE, the water distribution company?
Thanks, Bibi. That's why I mentioned that it's actually really premature to be talking about it, because Seven Seas has the responsibility to produce the water. I'm trying to still understand what are the guidelines, so that's a contractual obligation, so government, or I guess government signed the contract with them to purchase the water, but I still haven't seen the last contract. I'm still trying to find what are the parameters for the water that's being produced. So it's not clear for me at this point yet who has the responsibility. And again, remember, it is not one of the items, I believe, that's specified in the law to have parameters. So in other words, I don't know if there's a set range for the pH, but the consequence to it is that means the chlorine will not be, they have to use more chlorine. So it's still trying to evaluate where exactly is the responsibility, who has to bear the cost. So that's still something we're trying to piece together as we're looking at the issue.
You also mentioned that there is a committee working towards regulating the bacteria, Legionella or E. coli or something like that.
This is a comment that you made in your article. It's not correct. There's independent. This is CPS had established a committee together with the hospitality industry to work together with the industry to help them to understand, to give them guidelines, protocols in terms of best practices, in terms of what are their legal responsibilities. This is simply a industry committee to work together with the ministry, with CPS, to understand what their responsibilities are. They don't have any supervisory, auditing responsibilities. It's simply working together to improve the industry.
So I may continue my question on that committee. The members of the committee, how objective are they when the chairman of the committee happens to be working for one of the hotels that was tested positive on numerous times for Legionella? I'm
not confirming anything. That committee is established with CPS. Again, the chairperson of that committee has no authorizations to do anything except organize meetings. So if you believe that that's a conflict, you know, I don't see the conflict. If someone else was willing to step up and assume that role, I'm sure the chairperson of the committee, I can't speak for him, but I'm sure the chairperson of the committee would have no problems for somebody else to take on the work.
Thank you for your answers, Minister Lee. I think I have one more. Cedric, Minister Gibson, congrats on getting a receipt for the monies that was long owed to St. Martin. But I believe you had said previously, and based on what CFT had said about paying off SZV and APS, can you tell me at this point in time if that money was transferred to APS and SZV, and if government also made their first sets of payments, as for example the rent for this building, that the monies from the money that SZV invested in getting this building up to par?
I think both questions could be answered very simple. No, no. So the monies have not been transferred to APS. The rent due on this building is due in July.
Thank you very much for your questions, Bibi. Andrew Dick, Daily Herald. Good morning. You have the floor.
Yes, good morning. Good morning to the Council of Ministers. Minister Bosman, concerning the electronic ankle bracelet issue, are we using any ankle brace, electronic monitoring ankle bracelets now? from anyone?
As far as I'm aware of, not. I really don't know. That is why I said in the statement. I know it was prominently in the newspaper, so that's why I address this, to indicate that I'm aware of the problem and looking into the problem. But as far as I'm aware, it's not happening. But I still have to get the reports from all of the departments involved as to what the situation is with that situation.
Okay, with the different issues happening at the prison and injustice, is it a priority to look into that now, or is it something that you'll eventually get to?
Well, we try to give all the issues the priority, and if someone, a company is claiming that they are owed, and especially such a substantial amount, yes, I think we would have to look into it, because it would end up in an eventual court case, may be able to cost us even more. So I think we owe it, and to everyone, as a matter of fact, to respond as quick as possible to their concerns. I believe, not because an article appear in the newspaper. The newspapers do not set my schedule for me, you know, but I think the issue at hand warrants that it be looked into.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Emmanuel, concerning the parking lot in Kimsha, how far is the plans or the works with that respect?
I'm still waiting on the rendition from the architect as to how it's going to go, because the thing with the parking lot in Kimsha, we still have to do an extra piece. And that was the agreement I made with the dive shop, that as it is right now, you don't have to move. So we come with a sort of an understanding. But when we are ready for the extra piece, you would eventually move, things will be placed in a container, and then you will receive a spot to the max. I believe the amount of 60 to 70 square meters is what they are looking for. Because the whole concept that I'm looking at concerning the parking lot, as it is right now, it's just a slab of concrete. And whatever parking that's going to be parking still will be a slab of concrete. I am saying it should be maximized and we should use it to its full potential. Why don't we go up 4 floors? And we can do at the bottom, on the side, as commercial. So you're going to have, like, for example, the issue with Dino wouldn't happen anymore, because now he can get a commercial spot where he'd have water, where he has electricity, you have public bathrooms. Right now, as it is, it's just a slab of concrete. So, and it's not going to cost government anything. Why? Because there's an investor. So how are we going to do it, right? We're going to split the parking. We're going to get condos to the top. He's going to make his money back with the commercial space. And government is going to collect the revenues from the parking. And these are the angles that I'm sort of looking at, where we can maximize our use to our full potential infrastructure that we have spent a tremendous amount of money on. And I've said it all the time. We spend millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on infrastructure, and we give them to the people for free. We spend millions of dollars on a causeway, I've said it before, and it's for free. Spend over 700-something thousand on a slab of concrete for free. I don't think that's the way it should be. I think we should have, as it is right now, it's 80 parking spots. I am looking at 300 and something parking spots that is going to be paid parking. You're going to create jobs, and revenues is going to come from it, not just a slab of concrete.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for your questions. Mr. Lyndon Brown, good morning to you. I believe it's BCN TV. Good morning, you have the floor.
Okay, question to the Minister of Finance. You said your the tax department are busy cleaning up. Couple of years, Mr. Tweed had gave the people of St. Martin a tax break. Is there any tax break in this process? You said that the department in the process cleaning up the tax department. What in it for the people of St. Martin?
I think if I understand the question, you refer to former Minister Tweed, who gave the people a tax break. That matter was a letter which he had written to the receiver of taxes, informing the receiver of taxes not to collect taxes prior to 2006. And that's where it stayed. I have submitted, which I've reported here at the press briefing before, that the necessary legislation to crystallize that was prepared by my department, submitted to COM, approved by COM, and went in the pipeline to the Council advice, eventually to get the Parliament to change the legislation or make the necessary amendments to formalize that taxes owed before 2006 do not have to be paid. That's presently by the Council of Advice and in the pipeline. You ask if in the legislation that I talked about today, if there's any tax break. The legislation, as I explained, is legislation that's on the books for many, many years and actually has no practical use. And if you're reforming your tax system, you want to get rid of impractical laws that are on the books. And those are the laws that I spoke about that was approved by the Council of Ministers yesterday in terms of, and only with the aim of, cleaning up some of the laws that are no longer practical today. The entire tax reform is a formidable process. It's a behemoth of a job, quite challenging. So we're splitting up in parts. This was the first part yesterday. Going forward, you will hear in the next month or two, there'll be several new tax laws that we'll be presenting to the Council of Ministers for approval to reflect the changes of going more towards indirect taxes, trying to reduce existing taxes, to stabilize revenues of government going forward.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Minister Lee, you was at the ILO meeting last week, and you emphasized that St. Martin do not have unemployment. What needs to happen? The people need to be educated. Can you comment? Let me say it again. You said that the people, St. Martin do not have unemployment problem. What needs to happen? People need to be educated.
In my experience so far as minister, a few issues. I believe there's a compliance problem. As we've gone out a number of times with inspectors, the amount of people that are undocumented, in other words, without the proper permission to work, are working in our community. I think many of us are well familiar with that. Each of those positions that are occupied actually, in my opinion, represents an opportunity for one of our own for employment. So there's a compliance issue. There's also an issue where I see that people are correctly applying for work permits, they're following the process, they're advertising, they're interviewing, etc. So I'm not blaming the businesses, but fact is that we're seeing applications for permits that are being granted because they've complied with the law, they've met all of the requirements for applying, but I'm seeing positions for bartenders, for security officers, for positions that I would say I find it hard to believe that we can't find our own people to occupy these positions. So then it begs the question of what's going on? Why are the people not applying for the positions? as I go, for example, in the community and I say, you know, look, for certain there's some security jobs, I'm seeing them. We're working with one company who says they need a sizable amount of security officers. But yet when you speak to some of our people, they reflect that, you know, is it a dangerous job? Sometimes, am I going to get paid for the overtime hours? So they have sort of a resistance to even considering the positions, which in a sense goes back hand in hand back towards a compliance issue. So I believe that there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to find employment for our people. In particular, if we focus on compliance and on making sure that education's there. And I think also there needs to be some labor reforms as well, and those are the things that we'll be going to discuss in our tripartite committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown, for your questions. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Cedric. Minister Emmanuel, I think I've been asking you these questions almost every week. Where are you with the situation at the St. Martin Housing Development Foundation, especially regarding civil servants that are on boards? And the same goes with GEBE. You have a civil servant on the board there. Where are you with the process of getting these civil servants to respect the wishes that you ask them to step down?
And you're going to get the same answer that you get every week. So it really doesn't make much sense. You keep asking the same question. NEPA has civil servant on the board. Almost every board in this country has civil servants on the board. Why are you so hell-bent that civil servants should not be on boards? I mean, again, if it was something that was so illegal, it wouldn't have been done. And that's what I told you last week, and the week before, and the week before that. And that's the same thing I want to tell you this week. My concern is not civil servants on the board. My concern is boards functioning and doing what they're supposed to do. So what I will tell you this, soon and very soon, the issue that housing will be a thing of the past, and at GEBE will be a thing of the past. It'll have no concern to me whether it's a civil servant or not on the board. I just want the board to function. If you have an issue with civil servants on the board, then you should deal with that issue, because I don't.
Villanova.
Yes.
And the social homes, where are you on
I
that?
never said nothing about social homes. I said affordable homes.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you tell me where are you on that?
On the 29th of this month, they will be in St. Martin, Villanova. On the 29th of this month, Villanova will be in St. Martin to unveil and present everything to the people of St. Martin.
Thank you. Minister Lee, you spoke about a financing of the new general hospital. Can you confirm if it is SZV and APS that will be financing this new general hospital?
SZV and APS are both players that are heavily involved in the discussion, as well as private banks, local private banks. I'm not handling the discussions with the financiers directly, so it'll be some form of a mix between the three. That's my assumption, my belief right now, my hope as well.
Thank you, Bibi. Andrew?
Minister Emmanuel, Back Street, Front Street. You know, I know that you're working on Back Street. Any plans on moving to Front Street? I know you're not a fan of the bricks, so any plans in the near future on changing also the road structure of Front Street?
You know, these are discussions I have almost every day. And we have a council of ministers, and I can tell you, and they can tell you, we are nice today, but in council of ministers, sometimes the gloves comes off, but I have utmost respect for all my colleagues. And I don't like the process sometimes that it takes, whether you want to call it the innocence of youth or inexperience or being new to how the system is. I just feel that things are scrawl and move at a snail's pace. If I could rip up the whole of Front Street, I would have done that a long time ago. but I can't. So things have to take a process. And I would get a Minister of Finance telling me, that's not the way it works. You have to send this in properly. You have to get this advice done. And that is exactly what I have to do, follow a process. So yes, there is plans to deal with Front Street, but I'm concentrating right now with the Minister of TIAC on Back Street. I have to take that trajectory, if I should use that word, and go that process and go that route and take it one step at a time. But there's a number of issues that we are working at the Ministry of Rummy, and it's sort of a collective agreement we all have as ministers, because sometimes I have to run over by the Ministry of Finance for advice on how to do this. And then I have to run down by my colleague, Minister Lee. How are we going to tackle the water issue? Before we came in here, we were outside in the corner talking, because it relates to GEBE, and he's responsible for the quality of water. If I want to change something in the budget, because I don't think that is a priority, but something came up, I have to run to the Minister of Finance and ask him to change it. And he will say, that's capital budget, that got to go to Parliament, that have to do this. I just have to go along with how it's supposed to be done. Parking, location is Rummy. But the Minister of Justice is responsible for the legislation. I can't just go and pick up a car without having a discussion with the Minister of Justice. That's how it works. If it's up to me, I would rip up the whole of Front Street, put up nice sidewalks that you can have availability for disabled people in wheelchairs, that they can go up on the side, have bathrooms in all of the little corners that are public, that you will have to pay for because someone will have to clean it. Those things, we have basically no public, yes, we have public bathrooms, the alleys. It's unsanitary, it's nasty, it's filthy. And again, the Minister of Health would come knocking on my door. But it's not only within my person just to do it. It's a collective bargaining agreement we all have.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Boseman, coming back to the issue of ACPOL, the last update you gave us is that the police were checking software, whether they were going to continue using ACPOL or their own in-house software. Is there any update where that's concerned? I know it was an issue for the Progress Committee also. Yes.
We are talking again with the folks who has the management of ACPOL among themselves, or who is in charge of the management. The situation with ACPOL has nothing to do with the software itself. We are more concerned about the management of the software. There is a committee or a council that manages the software. The ownership of the data, etc., remains that of St. Martin. However, in the past, we have had experiences where there was an issue of non-payment or dispute non-payment. And because of that dispute, basically, that organization pulled the plug. And that's where you have your information, your data stored for your law enforcement, the police, and whoever, which other instance uses it. So it cannot be so that for whatever dispute, that such a decision can be made. When this was brought up to find solution, how to prevent that from happening, the only answer that I got was, well, if all parties live up to their responsibility, then it won't happen. That is not satisfactory to me, because who determined if we live up to the responsibility or not? I found that we did not owe them anything. They found that we were owed. Eventually, a decision has been taken and St. Martin doesn't owe anything. But in the meantime, the plug was pulled, and it affects our law enforcement. And I would not enter such an agreement, while I would like to use that program, but if that is the condition and that possibility remains to exist, we will not use it. And like I said, Aruba is using the same program, and Aruba has it under their own management. So why can't we do the same? And those discussions are still taking place. While those discussions are taking place, we are looking at alternatives, okay, just in case we don't agree on that. Let me make something clear. The ACT-POL is just a software. The arrangements that exist between the countries in the kingdom is that we share information. There's no dispute about that. Once we agree that we will share information, we then have to determine which information we would share. That too has been determined. There's no dispute about that. And then somehow the discussion went, look, if we all use the same system, then it would facilitate the sharing of information. So the problem didn't exist because St. Martin don't want to share information, or St. Martin doesn't agree what information should be shared. The problem came about in determining which system we're going to use. That's St. Martin's decision. Once we could share the information that we agreed to share. Okay, so we have to take it back and refocus on what the intention is. And intention is that law enforcement have the possibility to share information. And it doesn't mean that we specifically have to use that system to do it. We would like to, but not under the conditions that are on the table.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Mr. Brown?
Minister Boseman, you have congratulated the police force of St. Martin. Is it battering the kind of gun that are on the street? Recent years, there was a call for the resident, other people to bring their gun in. Are you thinking about that anytime soon?
It's a good question. And yes, as a matter of fact, just before coming to the press briefing, with some of my advisors, we had discussed. As you know, St. Martin has a gun policy, okay, which was came into effect at the ending of last year. The gun policy deal is very restrictive. We are not like the U.S. The U.S. have the Second Amendment, where it's a right to bear arms. Okay, we don't want arms on the street. We don't want nobody walking around with guns. There's no hunting, etc., those type of things taking place on St. Martin. When I learned that one of the culprits pulled out an AK-47, aimed it at the police, all right, and fired it, then that should tell you the seriousness of the gun problem that we have on the street. However, there are two things. While the police and prosecutors will do everything in their power to strictly enforce the process of illegal guns on the street, we also have the legal guns and those folks who have a permit. And because of that exchange between last year with the new policy and now, some of those requests were held up. So I'm in the process of fixing that within the next week. Hopefully by the next press briefing, I would be able to give information on that. And once that is fixed, as far as I'm concerned, police and prosecutors have the total go-ahead to do everything in their power to take these guns off the street and severely punish anyone who's involved, whether in the possession or the trafficking of these weapons. It is ridiculous that people are walking around with AK-47s on our street. Just imagine that you were in the neighborhood with your kids, etc., and something like that happened. When we take these kind of measures, or when we talk like this, everybody, like I said many times, it's a small island. So whether it is an arrest, whether it is whatever, it is always somebody that we may know. And that seems to be the criteria to tolerate things. For me, it's not. Wrong is wrong, no matter who is involved in that wrong. And I think we all should take that mentality and encourage those that we know not to get involved in wrong, and then they would not have to worry about these type of things. But your question is, yes, we are very seriously about getting those guns off the street.
Thank you, sir. Minister of Finance, it seems like people want a lot of money. Is there an economical crisis in St. Martin?
I'm sorry, I did not get the question. People want to have a lot of money, you said?
I'm stating in regards to the robbery. It seems like people are not satisfied with small money. They want a lot of money.
Yes.
So I'm asking the Minister of Finance if there is economical crisis that people are not getting enough money. So they have to do other things to get a lot of money.
I don't think so, that is the case. I mean, and I think that these people, if you're referring to the incident that took place by Scotiabank, they were even from St. Kitts. So maybe they didn't have enough money there, so they come to look for some in St. Martin. No, there is a percentage of crime I think every country have, and you have to have the infrastructure to try to deal with that as best as you can. There is no problem with the economy at this point in time. Quite the contrary. Revenues are showing that this year, revenues are higher than they were the previous year. So it's not an economic problem that is causing this. It's probably more social problems. It's probably more greed than actually economic problems.